everything that we live for in every other day. Hope is why you wake up in the morning. And for an African woman, it makes it all different. When I was a younger magistrate, I think I still am, a lady walked into my courtroom. Not once, not twice, not thrice. But she was not the litigant in my court. It was the son who was the litigant in my court. And I kept on wondering what the problem was. I was not raised in the countryside, but it was fun working in the countryside because I knew of things that I would never have known if I worked in the city. So this woman couldn't speak English or Kiswahili, but she spoke in the native language. And the problem was she was a widow her husband had died some years back. But her son was always brought to court so that she could be intimidated because she was a widow and she didn't have rights. And that was the irony of the whole thing. So I left my comfort zone and came down where every other person was to hear her story. And this was her story. Her husband had died and she was HIV positive. And in the African context, or where I come from, at times for you to be cleansed means that you have to do a ritual so that you can be back and feel like a human being. And unless she did that, she was not going to be considered as a human being. She needed to do this so that she could live in the society. And this was really astonishing because this was out of every other human rights being. And I listened to her story. She had no shoes. She had not eaten for quite a number of days. And what triggered me was the fact that I saw her in my courtroom every other day. So what was done to her, her son was planted to have been having weeds or marijuana. And that is an offense in Kenya. And I had to get down and not sit up there to listen to her story, to get to know her story. And we created this rapport. And I said, if it meant that I was going to recuse myself from hearing her matters, so be it. And the journey began. And I had to get a women's rights organization to come and help me because that's the best I could do. I acquitted her son of all the charges because I knew they were all framed up. And this other older woman picked her up and gave this woman shoes and food. And for the first time, she rode into a bus out of the city. She went into her hotel room, and for the first time, she had a bed to sleep on. She had a smile on her face, and that really broke my heart because she had so many problems not to believe that she was a human being just because she was a woman. And after this lady started telling her story. It meant she had now hope to tell her story. And she started saying where it all began. It all began because she was a widow. It all began because she did not cleanse herself. And now she was looking against every other thing and had hope that there was somebody to listen to her story. And she said her story. And I was called to also listen to her story, a story that I'd always listened to, but in a different perspective. And from then, she was given HIV retrovirals. Now she felt, she even had more weight in her because she was all beaten down. She was an old and young woman. She was old because life had beaten at the worst part of it. But now she became younger because she had hope in her. And then she had shoes now. She had never put on shoes before. She had food to eat. The irony was she to sleep on a bed or on the floor because she had never even seen a bed with her. And her son too rode with her to the city. And there was it. She started giving her story and she became the empowerment voice of other women who were going through the same thing. And therefore, henceforth, this woman got her land rights because in Kenya again, it is all about a patriarch society. That means it's only men who can get the title deeds and have it all going for them. But this was hope for this young woman, this young old woman, and I call her young because she now looked young and she looked her age. And from then on, she kept on having this prayer And she thought in her dreams, of her wildest dreams, that I was her God. And that was not the case. I cried because it is just a matter of leaving your comfort zones to get to the level of every other human being. If you're a judicial officer, it does not mean that you're up there and I cannot listen to what is happening down here. The small thing that I did, I instilled hope in her for her to believe that women's rights are human rights. Unfortunately, years later, about 3 or 4 years later, she passed on. But I believe she died with a smile on her face. And that is my story.